My name is Sandra Adele. I'm currently a DPhil student at the DPhil Department of Medicine studying clinical medicine. Broadly, I study infectious diseases and my area of focus at the moment is COVID-19 and I look at the responses, the T-cell responses against SARS-CoV-2 in people who have been vaccinated, people with previous infection, and I also look at the viral variants as well. For example, SARS-CoV-2 virus, a lot of the vaccines that are currently being administered, like the ChAdOx vaccine or the Pfizer vaccine, they target the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2. So we use that to basically say if you've been vaccinated after your first dose, second dose, 6 months down the line, if you've been boosted, what does your spike response look like? Actually, I knew I was going to be working on COVID when I started my DPhil because I applied for a COVID project. Although the group I work in, they focus on other infectious diseases as well, such as melioidosis. But I knew that it was going to be a COVID project that I'll be working on. About a year into the pandemic, one of the things that we looked at, if you remember, some people were giving a short course of the vaccine. So basically after their first dose, they got their second dose quite early on, maybe on average 28 days, whereas some people took a while, so maybe 12 weeks. And we basically had people in both groups to look at what the immune response looks like if you waited a while for your second dose versus if you had your second dose a bit earlier on. And what we found out was that people who wait longer for their second dose on average have a higher immune response, and this influenced the government's policy changing for the UK to follow a long dosing regimen. Definitely, even if you think of the vaccine space, it takes an average of 10 years for a vaccine to get licensed, and now there are over hundreds of candidate vaccines for COVID, and we saw the approval of several vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, quite early on. So it shows that, this processes can be definitely fast-tracked. So it's quite encouraging for a lot of other diseases as well, that if the funding is there and all of that, then we could solve a lot of the world problems that we're having in terms of infectious diseases quite fast. And definitely in the way we think about science, I think working on COVID has shown how collaborative science can be. So it's the public health, it's the lab science, it's the policy. So it's definitely being a very collaborative effort. We work on T cells, but also as part of your immune response, you want to know your B cells, so your neutralizing antibodies, and have a whole group of people who do that. Some I haven't even met except via Zoom, but it's been extremely collaborative, so I like that. A lot of time in the lab, but I do enjoy it. But yes, the shortest T-cell assay that I do at the moment is 2 days, and the longest one is 7 days. So that's a lot of lab time. If you're trying to answer the question, comparing someone that didn't have COVID and comparing someone who had COVID and both have gotten vaccines, if you want to see the difference in their immune response, first you will get the blood off of these donors, off of these volunteers, and then you process it in the lab. From blood you could get plasma, serum and cells. So the cells is what you use for T-cell work, and the plasma and serum used for studying antibodies. And so with those cells, then we basically put them in a plate with the SARS-CoV-2 spike. It's not harmful, it doesn't have viral material, it's just basically the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. And if, let's say you've been vaccinated or maybe you've recently had SARS-CoV-2, what you would see on average is that your cells would produce certain chemicals which are called cytokines in response to being stimulated by SARS-CoV-2 peptides, and then we measure those qualitatively. Yeah, it's been very exciting, also exhausting because it's a very fast-moving field. So you really have to keep up. It's like when you're looking at papers, literally things are coming out daily, and sometimes you might be trying to answer a question and then you realize another group has answered the question, so you have to go and find another question to answer. So it's exciting in that it's all out there. It's very topical. It's happening right now. It's happening, real time. But definitely has its challenges with studying something that is ongoing. I don't know if I had a particular aha moment that I wanted to go into COVID. Despite finding it interesting, it was almost the only path to go because, for example, in the building that I work, people that are working on HIV, diabetes, everything, they just dropped that to work on COVID because we had all these questions that we really needed answers to. So that was in a sense chosen for me. However, in terms of infectious diseases, I'm Nigerian, and it's just something that I've always had an interest in infectious disease immunology. So if it wasn't COVID, it would have been, I don't know, maybe HIV, Hep C or something, but it definitely would have been in the infectious disease space. Yeah, definitely. I'm very interested in capacity strengthening, and one of the things that my supervisor is interested in as well, and she collaborates with various groups. So she collaborates with groups in Kenya, in Vietnam, in Thailand, and it's really interesting to see that basically what we are doing in Oxford is being replicated in these places. And so that's the hope that, we have labs, but sometimes the T-cell assays are very fine and it requires a lot of training. So hopefully all of these things we're doing can eventually be replicated literally in all lower middle income countries because they have a range, so much rich data. And currently in the UK, we really have just people with Pfizer and AstraZeneca and Moderna vaccines, but so many African countries are using 6 vaccines. So it will be interesting to look at, all those vaccines, what the immune response is like. So I think the most surprising thing I've experienced, maybe a bit narcissistic, was when I had my own blood taking so that I could look at my immune responses, and they're very high. So I was like, okay. And one of the markers we look at, because I guess in the 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds or younger populations, we do know that there's a lot of asymptomatic COVID. And so one of the things we do look at is called M and MP. So M and MP are in other coronaviruses as well. So it's if you've been infected with COVID or possibly other seasonal coronaviruses going around, you would have a strong M and MP response. And I didn't have any. And I was like, oh, so I was thinking like, surely I must have gotten COVID. This is 3 years into the pandemic. I thought, oh, surely I would have gotten COVID by now, just maybe asymptomatic. But that wasn't the case. So I think that was the most interesting thing. It's great. I love it a lot. I think part of me loving it, it's definitely the people I work with, the building, my supervisors, and it's just been great. It's been so supportive. Sometimes it's been very grueling because you want to maybe get a paper out or something. So just the general idea of academia itself, but it's been so supportive. When I first joined the building, I would just approach people randomly to get trained, and everyone would literally leave what they were doing to help me get trained or say, oh, come shadow me in this technique. I would say, first I would say go for it. But I would say it should be something that you should really be passionate about. So if it's not an area that you're passionate about, just with anything in life, I would say don't go for it. But if you're definitely passionate about it, go for it. There's so much opportunity to get trained in techniques, so let that not bog you down. If you're really curious about these questions being asked, whether it's about COVID, HIV, yeah, go for it. I sleep, that's fun. I play rugby and I play football. I think those are, The rugby, I don't know if you call it fun because there's a bit of fear. But yeah, so I play rugby for uni and I also play football for my college.